The man in the back seat train was already late. The 8:42 from Pasadena to downtown Los Angeles usually ran smooth. But that morning something had gone wrong. Announcements crackled over the speaker system, apologizing for technical delays. But nobody was listening. People just wanted to get where they were going. Some checked their phones with furrowed brows. Others stared blankly out the windows. Headphones tucked in, lost in their own worlds. The air was thick with impatience. Morning heat crept in through narrow windows. Backpacks pressed against legs. Briefcases balanced on knees. Everyone tried to act like they weren't bothered, but they were. On car 3, a young woman sat alone near the middle of the carriage. Her name was Lila. She wore a navy blue jacket and carried a satchel across her chest. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes were tired. She had missed breakfast again. She was headed to a job interview she wasn't sure she'd get, wearing shoes that pinched her toes, and hoping the train would move before she had to run 5 blocks. Downtown. She tried to stay calm. She always tried to stay calm. But then it happened. A man boarded at the last stop. Early 40s maybe, buzzed hair, large jacket, heavy boots. He scanned the car like he was hunting for something. Then his eyes landed on her. Lila shifted uncomfortably as he walked closer. The train was nearly full, but there were seats. He didn't take them. He chose to stand beside her, leaning on the overhead rail like he owned the space. "You got a name, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for others to hear. She didn't respond, kept her eyes on the floor. "Come on, don't be rude," he continued. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't be riding alone." Lila pressed her lips together. Her heart pounded. She wished she had moved seats earlier. "You going downtown?" he asked, leaning closer. "Maybe I'll walk with you." She turned her head and said quietly, "Please don't talk to me." The man smirked. "Oh, you're one of those, huh? Think you're too good." People heard it. Others on the train shifted in their seats. But no one said anything. Heads went down. Eyes turned away. No one wanted to get involved. Lila gripped the edge of her seat. And then a voice from the back, "That's enough." The man turned. Keanu Reeves stood slowly from his seat near the end of the car. He had been wearing a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses, a simple gray hoodie. Unnoticed, quiet, just another commuter. Until now. The man scoffed. "Who are you?" Keanu didn't raise his voice, didn't puff out his chest. He simply took a step forward. "Someone who thinks you should leave her alone." The man laughed. "You her boyfriend or something?" Keanu tilted his head slightly. "I'm a person, and that's enough." Lila looked up, her eyes wide. She didn't know him, didn't recognize him. But something in his voice, calm, firm, steady, made her breathe a little easier. The man squared up. "You gonna make me?" Keanu stayed still. "I don't want to, but I will." The entire car fell silent. The other passengers finally looked up. Some started filming with their phones. The man looked around, realized people were watching now, and backed off with a muttered curse. "Whatever," he said. "This whole train's full of weirdos." He moved to the far end of the car. Keanu turned to Lila. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly. "Thank you." He gave a small smile. "No one should have to deal with that." Someone nearby whispered, "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" Another voice, "It's him. It's really him." But Keanu didn't look around. He sat down quietly next to Lila, not too close, just enough to let her know he was there if she needed. "You don't have to say anything," he said, gently. "Just breathe." She did, deep, shaky, but real. And then the train began to move. As it picked up speed, the world outside blurred into motion again. But something inside Lila had shifted. Not because someone had rescued her, but because someone had noticed. Someone had cared. When the train pulled into Union Station, most people filed out quickly. The man who had bothered her slipped into the crowd and vanished. But Lila stayed seated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Keanu stood. "Do you need help getting to your destination?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I have an interview. 6 blocks up. I'm already late." He offered a soft smile. "I'll walk with you. You'll make it." They exited the train together. And while the rest of the city rushed past, the two of them walked through the morning sun. Like something important had just begun, something fragile, unfinished. but filled with meaning Lila had never expected. A stranger to step in, and she had definitely never expected that stranger to be Keanu Reeves. Ending line. And what she didn't know yet was that this one moment on a train would unravel into a story far bigger than either of them could imagine. *6 blocks, and a second chance the sun was already high. As they walked out of Union Station, heat shimmered off the pavement and car horns blared from every corner. People moved, fast suits, delivery drivers, tourists, all colliding in the chaos of downtown Los Angeles. But amidst it all, Keanu and Lila walked at their own pace. Like the noise had been turned down just for them, Lila kept glancing sideways, still unsure this was real. "You really didn't have to do that," she said, her voice soft. Keanu gave a slight shrug. "I know, but I couldn't just sit there." She looked down at her scuffed shoes. "Most people did." He nodded. "Sometimes. It's hard to know what to do, but it only takes one person to change everything." They walked a few more steps in silence. "What's the interview for?" he asked. Lila hesitated. "Graphic design assistant. I applied on a whim last week. Didn't think they'd actually call. But they did." "Yeah, problem is, I was already late before the train drama. Now I'm almost 20 minutes behind." Keanu checked his phone. "Give me the address." She pulled a crumpled paper from her bag and handed it to him. He looked it over. "I know that building. Don't worry. We'll make it." They turned a corner and crossed a busy street. Keanu moved to the outside of the sidewalk, subtly placing himself between her and the traffic. Lila noticed. She didn't say anything, but something in her chest softened. "So, you're really Keanu Reeves," she said finally. He chuckled. "Guilty. You don't seem like how I imagined." "How'd you imagine?" "I don't know. Maybe surrounded by bodyguards, wearing sunglasses. Not walking someone to a job interview." "I like to blend in," he said with a small grin. "You're not very good at it. Depends on the city." Lila laughed a real laugh. The first one in days. Her nerves started to ease, even though the clock was ticking. As they neared the building, Keanu pulled open the door for her. A security guard looked up, blinked, and nearly dropped his clipboard. Keanu smiled and said, "She has an interview. She's amazing." The guard blinked again. "Yes, sir. Of course." Lila turned to him. "Thank you." "Really?" He gave her a gentle look. "Just be yourself. They'll be lucky to have you." She stepped inside. The interview wasn't what she expected. Instead of sitting in a cold room with 3 strangers firing questions at her, she was greeted by a woman named Rachel who offered her water, complimented her portfolio, and said, "You've got a real voice in your work. We've been looking for someone like you." Lila blinked. "Really?" "Yes. And your references are solid. We called your former manager. He said you were one of the most creative people he's worked with." Lila's eyes widened. "I didn't know he'd say that." Rachel smiled. "We'd like to offer you a trial week, paid. See how you fit." Lila nearly dropped her bag. As she left the building, her hands were still trembling. The sun hit her face, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel small. But Keanu was gone. No note, no number, no trace. Just gone. Like a guardian who showed up, did what needed to be done, and vanished. That night, Lila sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea. Staring at the wall where bills used to hang, she took them down one by one. For the first time, they didn't feel like a threat. She took out her sketchpad and drew, not for work, not for a client. Just for herself. She drew a train, a crowded car, a woman sitting alone, and a man in the back seat, standing up. She titled it, "The Moment It Changed." A week passed. Her trial week at the studio turned into an offer. Not just entry level. They wanted her to lead a small campaign for a local nonprofit. The job paid enough to cover rent, groceries, and even a little left over. But more than that, it gave her confidence. She started taking the train again, not because she had to, because she refused to be afraid. And every time she stepped onto the platform, she scanned the crowd, half hoping she'd see him again. But she never did. Until one day she walked into a coffee shop after work, ordered her usual chai latte, and turned around. He was there. Sitting alone by the window, reading a book. She froze. Then smiled. So you do drink coffee, she said. Keanu looked up, surprised, and then smiled back. Lila, you remember me. Hard to forget someone brave. She sat down across from him. You disappeared. I do that sometimes. I got the job, she said. Thanks to you. He shook his head. Thanks to you. I just walked with you. Still, I've been hoping to say thank you. You just did. They sipped in silence for a few moments, and it was calm, easy. Like no time had passed. Then Keanu leaned forward. Can I tell you something? Sure. I didn't step in because I'm a celebrity. I stepped in because once someone stepped in for me. Lila listened. I was in New York, 19, no money, no place to stay, and someone gave me a place to sleep and a meal without asking for anything. It changed everything. She nodded. And now you do the same. I try when I can. They sat a little longer. Then Keanu stood. I'm leaving town for a while, shooting something in Vancouver. But I'm glad I saw you. Will I see you again? He smiled. Maybe. Or maybe you'll be the one someone else sees. She didn't fully understand what he meant yet, but she would. Because the train wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. The woman on platform 6. 3 months had passed since that strange, unforgettable morning. Since the man in the hoodie stood up for her. Since the train turned from a place of fear into a place of meaning. Lila had grown stronger, not louder, not colder, but steadier. She still carried that memory like a quiet flame inside her, warming parts of her that had gone numb before. She didn't tell the story often. When she did, she never said his name. She just called him the man in the back seat. Every morning, she still took the same train, different crowd, different energy. But something had changed. She walked taller now. She made eye contact. She smiled more. One Monday morning, she was running late. She had spilled coffee on her skirt, missed her usual train, and had to catch the next one from platform 6, a platform she rarely used. She arrived breathless, heart pounding, just as the train screeched in, and then she saw her, a woman maybe 50, sitting on a bench with 2 bags at her feet. Her hands were shaking as she searched her pockets. Her eyes darted left and right. Something about her looked off, panicked, like the world was moving too fast for her to hold on to. People walked by. Some glanced. No one stopped. Lila hesitated. Then the woman stood up and stepped close to the platform edge, too close. Her hands trembled. Her lips moved like she was talking to herself. Lila stepped forward. Ma'am, she said gently. The woman didn't hear her. The train was coming fast now. Metal on metal. Louder, closer. Lila stepped closer. Ma'am, are you okay? The woman turned her head just slightly, and that's when Lila saw the tears in her eyes. Something inside Lila moved before her thoughts could. She reached out, not forceful, not dramatic. Just enough to touch the woman's arm. Let's step back, okay? Lila said softly. The woman flinched but didn't pull away. Lila guided her back from the edge, just as the train blew past them. Wind rushing so hard it pulled the breath from her lungs. The moment passed. The platform quieted. The woman collapsed onto the bench, head in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. Lila sat beside her. It's okay. You're safe now. They sat in silence. Then the woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a note, folded, stained. She handed it to Lila without speaking. Lila opened it. I'm tired of being invisible. Lila's throat tightened. What's your name? She asked. Joanne. Hi, Joanne. I'm Lila. Joanne nodded, wiping her face with a shaking hand. Do you want to come with me? Lila asked. We can get coffee, somewhere quiet. Joanne hesitated, then nodded. They rode the train together, sat in a small cafe 2 blocks from Lila's office. Over tea and toast, Joanne slowly shared her story. A divorce, an eviction, a son who stopped calling, a job she lost after 25 years. I used to manage an entire warehouse, she said, staring at her hands. Now I can't even get someone to look me in the eye. Lila listened, just like Keanu had listened to her. Someone helped me once, she said. Now I'm helping you, and someday, maybe you'll help someone else. Joanne looked up. Why are you doing this? Because I know what it feels like to need someone to notice. Lila didn't try to fix her. She didn't promise it would all be okay. She just sat there. Present. When they finished, Lila walked Joanne to a nearby resource center. She didn't push. She just made the introduction, handed her a card, and said, "They'll treat you with respect." Joanne held her hand tightly. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. That night, Lila rode the train home in silence, and she realized this was what Keanu had meant. Maybe you'll be the one someone else sees. He hadn't just stepped in to help her. He had lit a match, hoping she'd pass the flame, and she had. From that day on, Lila carried a folded note in her bag. It said, "You are not invisible. Someone sees you." And every now and then, when she saw someone who looked like they needed it on the train, on the street, outside a clinic, she'd quietly hand it to them and walk away. No explanation. No name. Just a small reminder that they mattered. Because sometimes kindness doesn't need to speak loud. It just needs to show up. The voice that couldn't speak. The city moved on, as cities do. Cars jammed intersections, sirens echoed through narrow streets, and people rushed past one another without a glance. But somewhere in the heart of that movement, Lila was quietly building something no one could see, something soft, powerful, and human. Each morning, she folded a new note and placed it in her bag. "You matter. I see you. Your story is not over." Simple words, small messages, but they had weight. Sometimes she left one in a library book. Sometimes she slipped one under someone's coffee cup when they weren't looking. And sometimes she gave it straight to someone who looked like they were barely holding on. One Tuesday, as summer leaned into fall, she boarded her usual morning train. She had just started a new project at the design studio, her first campaign as lead, and the pressure was rising. But Lila had changed since that morning with Keanu. She no longer saw the world as something that pushed her around. Now she walked into it with quiet strength. The train was crowded, loud. A boy kicked the seat in front of him. A woman argued with someone over Bluetooth. People stared at their phones. Then Lila noticed someone different. In the far corner sat a teenage girl, maybe 17, small and thin, wearing a school uniform that didn't quite fit. She stared out the window, hands clenched in her lap, something about her face tense. Distant pulled at Lila's chest. As the train rocked forward, 3 other teens entered. 2 boys, 1 girl, laughing loud, backpacks slung low. They spotted the girl in the corner. "Hey, look who's here," one boy said. The girl flinched. They moved in fast, teasing, fake friendly, loud enough for everyone to hear but soft enough not to draw attention. "Where's your voice today?" the other boy mocked. The girl didn't speak. She could in single quotes. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. They laughed again. "Oh right, forgot. She's a mute." Lila's chest tightened. She watched the girl sink into her seat, pulling her sleeves over her hands. No one moved. Not the man reading the paper, not the couple scrolling through their phones, not the elderly woman knitting near the door. And Lila remembered that day. She remembered what silence felt like when it was weaponized. So she stood, walked over, and sat next to the girl. The bullies stared at her, confused. "Hey," one boy said, "this is our friend." Lila didn't look at them. She looked at the girl. "Do you want me to stay here?" she asked gently. The girl nodded, barely okay. Then she turned to the others. "You need to move." They blinked. "Excuse me, leave her alone." They scoffed, tried to laugh it off. "Who even are you?" "Someone who knows what it's like to be ignored." Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, but it had weight. Passengers started to watch now. The boys hesitated. The girl rolled her eyes. "Whatever," she muttered. They walked off, muttering to each other. Lila turned to the silent girl. "My name's Lila." The girl opened her bag, pulled out a small notebook, and scribbled something. "Thank you." Lila smiled. "Do you ride this train every day?" She nodded. Double quotes, "Me too. We can ride together tomorrow if you want." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She scribbled again. "People don't usually talk to me." Lila reached into her bag and pulled out one of her notes. "You don't need a voice to be heard." She handed it to the girl. The train rolled on. Life outside kept moving. But inside that moment, 2 strangers sat side by side, one with a voice, One without but both finally seen. At the next stop, the girl stood to leave. Before stepping off, she turned back and handed Lila a torn piece of paper from her notebook. It read, "My name is Emily." And Lila knew this wasn't just a good deed. This was connection. This was how healing starts. The next day, Lila brought to drinks from the cafe near the station. When Emily boarded, they sat together again. No words needed. Just presence. And in the days that followed, more moments like that came, one by one. Quietly. Like ripples. The story they almost missed. The days blurred together like brushstrokes in motion. Subtle changes, small acts, quiet connections. Lila continued riding the train, folding her notes, meeting new faces, but something inside her had begun to stir, like a voice calling her towards something she didn't yet understand. One afternoon, as clouds rolled over the city and the wind carried the scent of rain, Lila sat across from Emily on the train. They didn't speak much. Emily still preferred to write, but their bond was real. To women, once strangers, now silent allies, Emily scribbled something and passed it across. "I read about a man who gave someone a sandwich and a chair, and it changed her life." Lila smiled. "I've lived that kind of story too." Emily nodded, writing again. "You should tell yours." The thought caught Lila off guard. Her story? But who would care? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just a moment, a train, a stranger who stood up. But later that night, she sat by her window with a cup of tea and stared at a blank notebook. Then she began to write. About the train. About the man who didn't raise his voice. About the silence that broke her fear. About how kindness started like a ripple and grew into something she couldn't stop. She wrote until the sky turned dark, and she kept writing the next day. And the next. She didn't write for an audience, not for likes or praise. She wrote because the words had lived inside her too long. Now, they were finding their way out. A week later, she submitted a short version to a local community blog under a pen name, Just a Girl on a Train. She didn't expect much, but 3 days after it was published, the article went viral. People shared it on social media, tagging friends, writing things like, "This made me cry. We need more people like her. This reminds me of someone who helped me once." And then one comment changed everything. Was the man in the story. Keanu Reeves, another user replied, "Sounds like something he would do." And then Keanu himself liked the post. No comment, no fanfare, just a quiet acknowledgement. But people noticed. Articles were written. Was Keanu Reeves the quiet hero in viral train story? Lila's inbox flooded. People wanted interviews, podcasts, book deals. Even a small publishing house reached out and asked if she would consider turning it into a full memoir. She sat with the offer for days. She didn't want attention, didn't want to become a symbol. But then she remembered Joanne on Platform 6. She remembered Emily's notebook. She remembered how one moment one man's choice had changed her entire path. So she said yes. Not because she wanted to be seen, but because someone else might need to feel seen. She wrote honestly. Not just about the train, but everything before and after. The fear, the silence, the healing, the ripple. The book was titled The Man in the Back Seat. When it launched, it didn't break records. It didn't top charts. But it reached the right people. Letters poured in. A teenage boy who had been bullied wrote, "Your book gave me courage to speak up for someone else." A woman wrote, "I carry a note in my purse now, just like you." One day, Lila received a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note on thick, plain paper. "Sometimes silence is louder than noise. Thank you for making it sing." She stared at the letter for a long time. No signature, no full name, but she knew he was still watching, not in a fame-driven way, but with quiet pride. That weekend, she was invited to speak at a small event focused on acts of compassion. She stood on stage in front of maybe 100 people. Her palms were sweaty. Her heart raced. But she told the story. And in the front row sat Joanne. Next to her was Emily, holding a fresh copy of the book in her lap. Behind them were new faces, strangers. Maybe, but not strangers for long. When the event ended, a young man approached. "I don't have a voice like yours," he said, "but I play piano." I want to make something that helps people feel seen. Lila smiled. Then that's your story. Start with one note. That night, she walked home with a sense of something bigger growing around her. Not fame. Not attention. Just connection. Keanu had once stepped in, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. And now she was doing the same. Passing it on, reminding others that the smallest act could echo through the world. The day the world stood still. Story had spread far beyond what Lila ever imagined. Not because it was flashy or viral in the usual way, but because it was real, human, honest. It traveled quietly, like the notes she once folded into corners of cafe tables and train seats. She had given a few interviews by now, though she always kept them humble, always made sure the focus stayed on the message, not the moment, not on her, and definitely not on Keanu. But still, people asked, always the same question, was it really him? And her answer was always the same, it doesn't matter who it was, it matters what he did. The story became more than hers, it became a movement. People began sharing their own moments of quiet kindness. Someone who paid for their meal, someone who waited for them at the bus stop when they were scared, someone who simply said, I see you. The hashtag just as Eaten It Rain began trending. In small circles, nonprofits picked it up. Schools used it in projects. Even the transit authority printed a quote from her book on posters around the city. Kindness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just sits beside you. But Lila stayed grounded. She still rode the train, still walked to her job, still kept a note folded in her bag. Until one morning, something unexpected happened. She was invited to speak at a citywide forum on public safety and compassion. The event was hosted by local leaders and featured advocates, survivors, and quiet heroes. Lila agreed, nervous, but determined. The forum was held in an old theater downtown, full of creaky red velvet chairs and golden trim that shimmered under the lights. The room was packed. As she stood backstage, adjusting the small microphone clipped to her collar, an assistant handed her a program. Her eyes scanned the list of speakers and froze. There, near the bottom, under special guest speaker, KeanuReeves. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen him since the day in the cafe. He hadn't responded to the book, not directly, just that short, handwritten note. She didn't expect him to show up here. Not now, not after everything. But as she stepped on stage, the lights dimmed and the room hushed. She told her story again, only this time it felt different. Stronger. Not from memory, but from truth. She spoke about the train, about the fear, about the silence, about the ripple, and then she ended with this: when I was at my lowest, someone didn't fix me. He didn't offer a solution or even say much. He just stood up. And in that moment, I learned something that changed everything. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It only needs courage. The crowd stood in a quiet ovation. And then, from the wings, he stepped out. No fanfare. No spotlight. Just a man in a dark jacket and soft eyes. Keanu walked to the microphone, looked at Lila. Then looked at the crowd. I don't like public speaking, he said gently, but I like people. And sometimes, showing up is enough. He turned to her. What she didn't tell you is that her courage didn't stop on that train. She took it with her. She gave it away. And now it lives in every stranger who dares to say, I see you. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterward, they sat together in the green room, just the two of them. Lila handed him something. A note. Folded. Inside it said, You gave me a moment. I turned it into a lifetime. Thank you. Keanu smiled. You did more than I ever could. She looked at him. What made you stand up that day? He shrugged. I saw someone hurting, and I couldn't sit still. Has anyone ever done that for you? She asked. He paused. Once, a long time ago, and I never forgot it. They sat in silence for a moment, full, warm, enough. Before he left, he handed her something. A small envelope. Inside was a photo. Grainy, old. A train car, a woman crying, a stranger standing. Someone took this that day, he said. I've kept it all this time. Now it's yours. Lila held it carefully. A memory frozen in time. Proof that the smallest moments become the biggest stories. They hugged once, quiet, respectful, human. and he was gone again. No headlines, no cameras, just a story passed from one soul to another. That night, Lila framed the photo and placed it beside her window. And below it, a quote she painted by hand: "The world doesn't change through speeches. It changes when one person dares to stand up." And every day after, she reminded herself and others that courage doesn't have to roar. Sometimes it just takes a deep breath and the will to say, "Leave her alone."